first night, I noticed the lights changing on their own. It wasn't dramatic. No flickering. No plunging rooms into darkness. Just a hallway light that was on when I passed it, then off when I came back 10 minutes later. Even though I hadn't touched the switch. I'd been paid to watch the house for 3 weeks while the owners were overseas. It was a favor, passed through a friend of a friend, easy money, they said. The place sat in a quiet neighborhood outside a mid-sized city in the Midwest. Newer construction. Clean lines. No history I could find online that suggested anything tragic or strange. My job was simple. Stay overnight. Make sure no one broke in. And log anything unusual. The owners were paranoid after a string of burglars nearby. They didn't want cameras streaming to their phones. They wanted a person. Someone physically present. They paid cash. I work remote support. Mostly overnight contracts. So the hours didn't bother me. I packed my laptop, a change of clothes, and groceries. The house was fully furnished but deliberately impersonal, white walls, neutral furniture, framed stock art. It felt staged, like a model home no one ever planned to live in. The first evening passed quietly. I ate dinner at the kitchen island, answered emails, watched the rain gather on the windows. The house had that new build smell. Drywall, faint plastic, nothing organic. When it got late, I did what they asked, walked through each room, checked locks, made notes in the spiral notebook they'd left on the counter. Everything normal. I slept on the couch, lights off except for the kitchen. Around 2 a.m. I woke up because the house felt different. That's the best way I can explain it. No sound woke me. No movement. Just the sensation that something had shifted. I sat up and listened. The air felt colder. Not dramatically, just enough that my skin noticed. That's when I saw the hallway light was off. I knew it had been on. I remembered because it cast a long stripe across the living room floor. And I'd thought about how bright it was. I stood, barefoot, and walked down the hallway. The switch was still in the up position. I flipped it off, then on. The light came back, steady and normal. I told myself I'd misremembered. Fatigue does that. I wrote a quick note in the log anyway, mostly to reassure myself that I was being thorough. Night 1 ended without anything else worth mentioning. The second night, I noticed the doors. The house had one of those open layouts where the bedrooms branched off a central hall. All the interior doors were solid, heavy, painted white. Before bed, I closed them out of habit. I don't like sleeping in houses with open doors. It's a leftover instinct from growing up in a noisy home. At 1:47 a.m., I went to the bathroom and saw that the door to the guest bedroom was open. Not wide, just enough to see the dark inside. I stopped in the hallway and stared at it longer than I needed to. The air felt still, like the house was holding its breath. I pushed the door closed and stood there, hand on the knob, waiting for something. Nothing happened. I checked the rest of the doors. All closed. When I lay back down on the couch, I felt embarrassed by how alert I was, how hard my heart was beating over something so small. Houses settle. Air pressure changes. I told myself all the things you're supposed to tell yourself. Still, I didn't sleep well. By the fourth night, patterns started to form. Lights would be on in rooms I hadn't entered. A bathroom fan would be running quietly when I passed by. Once, I found a kitchen cabinet cracked open just an inch, like someone hadn't pushed it all the way shut. I checked the exterior doors constantly. The alarm system showed no breaches. The windows were locked. The house was sealed. I started logging times, not because I thought it would matter, but because I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't losing track of things. It was always late, always after midnight. Never when I was actively moving through the house. Only when I returned to a space I'd already checked. I called my friend, the one who connected me to the job, and asked, casually, if the owners had mentioned anything odd about the house. He hesitated just long enough for me to notice. They're just anxious people, he said. That's why they wanted someone there. I didn't push. The fifth night was when I heard the sound. I was in the living room, headphones on, watching something forgettable. The volume was low. The house was quiet enough that I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Then, beneath everything else, I heard a soft click. Not a loud noise. Not a bang. Just the sound of something small and mechanical being pressed. I pulled the headphones off. The sound came again, faint and distant, like a light switch being toggled somewhere far away. I stood and listened. The click repeated, evenly spaced, once every 10 seconds. It wasn't coming from the walls. It wasn't electrical. It sounded like it came from inside a room, with a door closed. I followed it down the hallway, stopping outside the main bedroom. The door was shut. The clicking continued on the other side. I didn't open it right away. I don't know why. There was no rule against entering the bedrooms. ID checked them every night. Still, something about the sound made me hesitate, hand hovering inches from the knob. I told myself it was a timer, a thermostat, some automated feature I didn't understand. I opened the door. The room was dark and empty. The sound stopped instantly. I stood there, breathing, waiting for it to start again. It didn't. I searched the room with my phone's flashlight. Nothing out of place. No devices. No switches moving on their own. That night, I slept with every interior light on. On the 7th night, I realized the house knew my routines. I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean the changes only happened when I wasn't looking. If I stayed in one place too long, nothing changed. But the moment I moved, went to the bathroom, stepped outside to take a call, even turned my back for a minute, something would be different when I returned. Not dramatic. Never enough to prove anything. Just enough to make me feel watched. I started leaving my phone recording video when I walked through the house. I checked the footage obsessively. Nothing ever appeared on screen. No movement. No shadows. Just me, moving through rooms that behaved perfectly normally when observed. The notebook filled with notes that sounded unhinged when I read them back. Hall light off again. Guest door open slightly. Bedroom fan on was off earlier. No explanations. Just observations. The realization came on the 9th night. I woke up on the couch around 3 a.m. and immediately knew I wasn't alone. There was no sound, no movement, just certainty. I lay still, listening to my own breathing, trying to figure out what had changed. Then I noticed the feeling pressure, like someone standing just out of view. Slowly, I turned my head toward the hallway. All the doors were open, every one of them. I hadn't opened them. I was sure of that. ID checked before lying down. I always did. The darkness inside each room looked deeper than it should have. Like the light from the living room stopped at the threshold. I sat up, heart pounding, and said nothing. The house remained silent. I walked down the hallway, closing each door carefully, deliberately, as if I were correcting a mistake. When I finished, I stood there for a long time, listening. Nothing happened. In the morning, I packed my bag. I told myself I'd finished the job, that I wasn't scared, just tired. That 3 weeks of good money wasn't something I could afford to walk away from. I stayed. The final night, the house did something new. I was in the kitchen, writing in the log, when I heard footsteps. Not creaks, not settling, actual steps, slow, measured, coming from the hallway. I froze. The sound stopped just outside my line of sight. I waited, heart hammering, for someone to step into view. No one did. After a long minute, I forced myself to look. The hallway was empty. The doors were closed. Everything looked normal. I didn't sleep after that. At dawn, I left the notebook on the counter, locked the door behind me, and drove away. The owners never asked for details. They thanked me, paid the rest in cash, and didn't respond when I tried to explain why I wouldn't be finishing the remaining nights. A month later, I saw the house listed for sale. The photos looked clean, bright, empty. Sometimes, when I'm awake late at night in my own apartment, I notice a light on in a room I don't remember entering. I don't write it down anymore.